Welcome back to the public broadcast for new journalism, aka PB&J. This is a brief history of the Hays Code. In the early years of motion pictures, writers and directors, coming from the world of the theater, brought their most vivid imaginations to the screen. Infidelity, murder, and drugs were all the makings of a great story at a time of social and political repression for the American people. Whether that was the narrative itself or the diverse people driving it, film as a medium was used to challenge ideas, beliefs, and preconceptions, as well as entertain. So much so that by 1930, the Motion Picture Production Code, known as the Hays Code, was introduced in order to better control what people would see on screen and who could tell those stories. Hollywood in the 1920s was a super racy time, says ACMI curator Chelsea O'Brien. Films were beginning to mature. They were dealing with adult content. They were sort of racy and projected images of women in power and making their own choices. There were off-screen stories of drugs and alcohol and partying and overindulgence, and then the industry was rocked by really huge scandals, namely the death of Olive Thomas, the murder of William Desmond Taylor, and the alleged rape of Virginia Rappe by popular movie star Roscoe Fatty Arbuckle. So, all of these things really brought widespread condemnation from religious, civic, and political organizations. Many felt that the movie industry was really morally questionable, so there was all this political pressure. In 1915, the Supreme Court case, Mutual Film Corp. Versus Industrial Commission of Ohio, ruled that motion pictures were not protected by the First Amendment's freedom of speech and press. This decision granted the individual state censorship of films, but not every state agreed on what was decent for public viewership. Not wanting to appease to the censorship boards of every state, Hollywood decided to create the Motion Picture Administration of America, or MPAA. MPAA is a self-censoring board that every movie had to get the approval of. The MPAA was ran by William H. Hays, who lent his name to the newly formed code of conduct that film had to go by. The code prohibited profanity, suggestive nudity, graphic or realistic violence, sexual persuasions, and rape. It had rules around the use of crime, costume, dance, religion, national sentiment, and morality. And according to the code, even within the limits of pure love or realistic love, certain facts have been regarded as outside the limits of safe presentation. In 1934, the Hays Code was made more powerful in joining forces with the Catholic-controlled Legion of Decency, which had the ability to call for boycotts throughout the nation if films didn't pass muster. This potential financial threat to the studios proved most effective in controlling content of films. In large part, the studios found self-regulation preferable to the threat of regulation by the government, but also wanted the seal of the MPPDA to improve their chance of success at the box office. Studios voluntarily submitted their scripts to the Hays office, which then gave detailed commentary. However, recommendations were not always followed. Vaudeville comedian Groucho Marx was the king of sexual innuendo. A little wiggling of his eyebrow, mustache, and cigar merely enhanced the raunchy dialogue, and the censors would see red. Groucho's original line in Monkey Business was as follows: "You bet I'm shy. I'm a shyster lawyer. And who are you?" he countered roguishly, his beautiful white body aching to be held. It was changed to, "You bet I'm shy. I'm a shysty lawyer." Later in this scene, the script originally read, "I know, you're a misunderstood woman who's been getting nothing but dirty breaks. Well, we can clean and tighten your brakes, polish your frame, and oil your joints, but you have to stay in the garage all night." It was changed to, "I know you're a misunderstood woman who's been getting nothing but dirty breaks. Well, we can clean and tighten your brakes, but you have to stay in the garage all night." If Groucho Marx was the king of sexual innuendo, Mae West was the queen. West movies were suggestive enough that they were partially the impetus for the strengthening of the Hays Code in 1934, which sought to protect innocent moviegoers from certain defilement. "She Done 'Em Wrong" has a famous but frequently misquoted line of dialogue that would send the censors scurrying for the scissors in the not-too-distant future. "Why don't you come up sometime and see me? I'm home every evening." A mischievous moment in Bring It Up Baby somehow escaped the notice of the Hays office. This particular chaotic scene shows Cary Grant running around in a frilly women's bathrobe. When a matronly dowager appears at the door and questions why he's dressed in women's clothing, an exasperated Grant yells, "Because I just turned gay all of a sudden!" It probably slipped through because the slang word was relatively new at the time, and the objection wasn't raised until after the film was released. The Hays Code was technically voluntary, so how did it have so much power on what stories were to be told through film? The Hays Code was a system of enforcement under the Production Code Association, under the Motion Pictures Producers and Distributors of America, or the MPPDA. The MPPDA was made up of all the heads of the major studios of the time, and they owned all the movie theaters in the US. From around 1910 to the late 1940s, the golden age of Hollywood was operated under what is referred to as the studio system. 8 major studios not only created the movies, but also controlled distribution. The system of power granted the studios and their production companies full creative and economic control over what American audiences could publicly view. Now, the studio system came to an end in 1948 when the Supreme Court decision, United States versus Paramount Pictures. The end of the studio system saw a massive influx of foreign or international films being screened in the US, with audiences now being able to experience films like Godzilla. With the advent of television, influences from international filmmakers, and censorship cases like the antitrust decision, the Hays Code was finally cracked. In 1968, the U.S. Supreme Court rescinded its 1915 decision, now deciding that films in fact did fall under the free speech protection. This was a brief history of the Hays Code, brought to you by PB&J. Do you have a suggestion for another topic? Leave a comment below or email boomcommunity10@gmail.com.